Miss Linda here. So today I'm super excited. I'm going to be talking about my most favorite seductress, Queen Cleopatra. I'll be giving all the juice and the seduction tips I picked up from her Netflix movie. And I help women in relationships, in marriages. If you're married between 7 to 9 years, get back the love, attention, and affection that you had at the beginning of your honeymoon phase. And I post weekly videos on seduction, relationship tips, and femininity. So hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my weekly videos. So the world is talking about Cleopatra. Everybody has their own perspective. If you have not watched this series, head over to Netflix. Make sure you watch it because each and every woman, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're dating, or any woman who just feels like she wants to be able to tap into her juice as her woman, needs to watch this series. Now, everyone is talking about, oh, let's cancel this, let's cancel the series. It's gotten the worst reviews. But today I extracted some 5 or 6 tips that I will share with you around what it means to be a seductive woman and how to use your feminine influence to get whatever it is that you want from life. And I will use all the tips and everything I observed from watching the Netflix series. So the first thing, a seductress. And one of my most favorite books is The Art of Seduction. I mean, I have read this book back to back. It's even almost in tatters. And as per Robert Greene, one of the greatest, actually the greatest seductresses of all time was Queen Cleopatra. So going back to this series, the first thing that this gorgeous queen embodied is fearlessness. Many women are scared of what it is they want. Many women shy away from embracing their desires. Many women may even dream to stay in a 1,000-acre ranch, but they do not have that courage. They don't have that self-belief to be able to express their needs to their man. What I saw coming across so clearly was Cleopatra's fearlessness and that bold carpet move where she rolled up and showed up at Caesar's court, rolled up in a carpet. And if you read any of her stories, that same night, Caesar was so mesmerized by her that they slept together that night. And of course, he had many other mistresses, but Queen Cleopatra stood out from all of them. And even as you watch the series over and over again, you'll keep seeing this theme of her being fearless, of her executing her sister, executing her brother. Morality aside, she was fearless in the pursuit of what it is that she wanted. And it was all driven by her desire and her love for Egypt, because she truly believed that she was the rightful ruler. She was the queen of that land, and she would do anything for Egypt. So her fearlessness is what made her so magnetic, so attractive, and it's a very key aspect of being a great seductress. The second thing, she was strategic. Okay, if you look at how she was with Caesar, and until he died, then she moved to Mark Antony. All her relationships were very strategic. Of course, she knew that the only way she was able to maneuver in her territory, the only way she was able to get whatever it is that she wanted, she needed the assistance of the masculine. And that is why for her, it was really a question of survival. And she chose her partners very wisely. She did not guess. She did not even think twice about it. Through the series, you'll come to realize that she knew she needed Rome. And she knew the only way she could get whatever it is that she wanted was she had to go for the highest bidder. And that brings me to my third point. She had a burning desire. So you see that her desire to be queen, her desire to rule Egypt, her desire to look after her nation was so attractive. And you see, even as we go along, the fact that she used her desire to be the queen to do anything that it is that she wanted made her ruthless in the eyes of everyone else. But for her, she knew that, you know what, this is what my heart really wants, and I will do each and everything to get whatever it is that I want. So even at some point where when she had given birth to her twins with Mark Antony, and Mark Antony had ghosted her, throughout that period it was documented that Egypt thrived so much. The economy was up, agriculture was up, everything was up, and it really goes back down to her desire and her love for Egypt, because everything she was doing, it was not really for her own gain. It was because she had this deep desire to make sure that her family lineage carries on, the throne, that she continues to stay on the throne, and that the Ptolemaic name stays in the history books. And she knew that she needed to do anything and everything to get whatever it is that she wanted. Now, the other fourth quality about Cleopatra is how smart she was. And it's so interesting because so many times we are on YouTube, we see all these femininity coaches talking about beauty, obvious beauty. If anything, Cleopatra had a hooked nose and her father's features. She was not the most attractive woman. But what differentiated her from even Caesar's mistresses was her love for military. She had military intelligence. She was into astrology. She really was a smart woman. So over and above her body, she actually had other skills that could captivate a man like Caesar. I mean, Caesar was the Roman, he was a king, for crying out loud. So he had all kinds of mistresses that he could keep. But the one thing that differentiated Queen Cleopatra from all the rest was not just her physical beauty, was not just because she went to bed with him on the first night. It was because she had something in common with Caesar, which was the love for military art. And that was what kept them going. There was some mental stimulation. And you look back in this era, most of the women were not educated. Most of the women were not educated. So to come across a woman like Queen Cleopatra, she was smart, she was intelligent, she was not just a body, she was also mind. She could provide that mental stimulation, and they could sit and they could talk and they could banter and they could connect. He could relax around her. That was one of the things that really made Queen Cleopatra stand out. The other aspect about her, she believed in herself. So many times throughout the series, she equated herself to God, to Isis. And that mentality really showed me that she had a very strong sense of self. And there is nothing as attractive as a woman who truly believes in herself. And every time she would speak with Caesar, every time she would speak with Mark Antony, you notice that her speech used to elevate them. Like, she would talk to Caesar like he is God. Why? Because she felt she was a goddess. So that immediately was, it really used to fill up any deep emotional holes that Caesar had. Because you can imagine if you're sitting and talking to your man, and you're looking at your man like he is this huge thing. He's not just, even if he's going through problems right now, maybe with his business, with his work, but you sit and you look at him like a god, he will feel that energy. And what that does is it elevates a person. It's the same way if a man puts you on a pedestal, if he looks at you like a princess, you will behave and feel like a princess around him. So that was the one thing that her energy kept drawing, because she believed she was a goddess. She actually took after Isis. And for her, she felt like if she's a goddess, then any man she is with is a god. Therefore, they were elevated beings. Okay, so that sense of worth, that sense of self was really, really seductive, because so many people really are insecure about themselves. And to come across any woman who really truly felt like she was worthy and she was empowered and she was soft was really a very seductive quality about her. The other aspect about Cleopatra was, and I remember this particular scene when she had organized this whole delicious banquet, and yeah, this time they were in Rome, and she was the only woman there. And I remember one of the men were already making fun of her, and they were like, "What is a woman doing here?" And she was there drinking her wine, and she asked, "Is this how you treat women? Is this how you talk about women?" And she actually challenged the men. And remember, this is an era where all the wives, all the women are at home. They are at home. She was the only one who was out there mixing and mingling and drinking and partying and having a good time with men. That was not morally right, but to her, because she had such an open spirit, she had a fluid spirit, because of course of her Egyptian ancestry, which was such an open culture, that difference in culture was so magnetic and it was so mesmerizing. And that's what tends to happen. Many times as wives, when we are married, we shut everything out. We shut all our fun stuff. We shut out all our sexiness. If you used to wear miniskirts and party, you stop doing all that stuff. You start to become this boring old maid. And that's why sometimes you'll find your man will want to go out and be with like a different setup, a different era where he's more relaxed and more to have fun. So that element of her having that free spirit, fluid spirit, where she could party, she could relax, she was open-minded, made her very, very alluring. And remember, she was one of a kind, because in that era, women were so like put on the side. They really had no rights. Most of them were at home. You were to get married for survival, and once you were married, you stay in the house because you were man's property. But for Cleopatra, she really was not any man's property. Okay. The other thing, she was very persistent. And this is one thing about seduction. Sometimes your victim may resist you, and sometimes it does happen. And we saw this when Mark Antony ghosted her. But she did not lose hope. She didn't give up. So for 3 years, when Mark Antony had gone back to Rome and married Octavia's sister, Cleopatra was left in Egypt with his twins, and she had an end goal with mind. So she did not give up. And when and it was even said that during this period, it was really difficult for her, because unlike Caesar, even Caesar, when he used to go back to Rome, he used to still write her and check up on her, but Mark Antony didn't. However, she knew she had an end goal. And when he eventually came around, what I absolutely loved about her is she had a list. She had a list of whatever it is that she wanted. Why? Because she understood the fundamentals of seduction, the fundamentals of power. If your man leaves and he wants to come back, you immediately have an edge. There is something he's coming back for. So she was not playing, her game was not about whether a man is going to text her or not text her. She was playing a more elevated game. Her game was conquering territories. Her game was making sure Egypt is cared for, Egypt is catered for. And she knew she needed Mark Antony. That's why with patience and skill, she let him back in, but she had a list of demands that she needed to be fulfilled before she could accept Mark Antony back. And eventually they got married, and eventually it seemed to be like a love marriage. But what I saw was a woman who was playing chess, not checkers. Then the other very seductive aspect about Cleopatra was self-preservation. When she went into war with Mark Antony and she saw they were being defeated, she quickly turned her ships and went back to Egypt. Many women, we are loyal. Yeah, just because you are with a man, you want to literally die with your man. But she had an end goal. She knew that, okay, right now we are losing and I have a bigger responsibility, which is Egypt. Let me go back to my land. Let me go back to my children. Of course, that caused a huge rift, but we see the aspect of self-preservation. Women were taught to sacrifice, to be nice, to do everything kind and altruistic. And any woman is usually made to feel guilty when she wants to choose herself. But this was something that she did, and she did really, really well. She preserved herself, she preserved her children, her legacy, her land. And even when she killed, she made sure that the sister was killed. The brother also died. She knew that she wanted to rule, and it was about her. It was really a cold world, and really at that point, any form of weakness, any form of kindness could not be tolerated. Because if you're not looking after yourself, you will be attacked and you will die. So for her, that aspect of self-preservation, it made her kind of cold and calculating. But this is the one thing about seductress. All great seductresses, they are mental strategists. In fact, one of the greatest courtesans, Ninon, a French courtesan, she said it takes 100 times more skill to make someone fall in love than to organize war. And why this was really important, as she had a super skill, was that she was enchanting these kings, she was enchanting these great men. She was not just playing to their lust. She wanted them to fall in love with her, because she understood that as a woman, you are only able to influence a man when a man is deeply in love with you. That's why sometimes you can be married for 2 years, 3 years, 7 years. However, when a man starts to fall out of love, you'll realize you're not able to tell him anything. You can't even tell him to stay home with you. He won't even want to. He'll be annoyed all the time. Usually what happens when that is happening, he is slowly falling out of love. And great seductresses understand that to be able to get whatever it is you want from your man, there has to be love. That's why many times you try to have relationship talks when the man is not feeling you, his energy is not coming before you. And that's why when we take the case of Cleopatra, even when Mark Antony had left her for those 3 years, she did not try to have many conversations. She didn't go to Egypt to try look for him and all this and all that. She focused on, she didn't try to go to Rome to look for him and to have a conversation, start to ask him why. She understood that his energy was not coming towards her. He really was not feeling her. So she decided to pour all her attention on Egypt, make sure everything is thriving. And of course, he came back. Once he came back, that was when she was able to express herself. Why? Because when a man's energy is coming towards you, that is the best time to get him to listen to you. That's the only time you can use him to influence. You can use your feminine influence. You can communicate. You can speak up. And you see, for her, she was going for big things. She wanted her children recognized, which was really important. She wanted to claim more territory. So her needs were not small needs like dates. For her, she was looking after nations, continents, families. So many people relied on her. And that is why for her, it was such an important thing for her to use her mental skill to be able to understand the psychology of these great men, so that she could look after the nation and look after her lineage. Okay. The last thing about Cleopatra is that when I just watched the whole series, and I've been reading up quite a bit about her, there are other elements that made her very seductive. The fact that she modeled herself around Isis, the fact that she dressed like goddess Isis, it immediately elevated her. So even her adornment, her makeup, look at her eyes. I think Cleopatra's eyes are a signature look. I went onto YouTube and I saw so many channels modeling Cleopatra's eyes, Cleopatra's looks. So even if you're not model beautiful, you owe it to yourself to adorn yourself. She always had this Grecan vibe going on, so she chose her clothes wisely, she chose her makeup well, she chose everything. Her perfuming was exquisite. And remember, Egypt at that point was really where it's one of the most ancient civilizations, so they were ahead, so ahead in terms of perfuming. I mean, even the art of perfuming bodies, it started from mummifying the dead bodies. So for her, she really understood that art of perfuming, of dressing, of adornment, of beauty. And the fact that she was not physically beautiful did not stop her from making herself look good. Is it Chanel who said there are no ugly women, they're just lazy women? What that means is, it's not that you're not pretty. Even if you feel you look weird, you can always do something. You can always accentuate yourself. And the other aspect about Cleopatra, and this one I saw, it came up quite a lot, was how she used her words, how she used her speech, how she communicated. And I mentioned this, most of the times is when we speak to people, she had a way of being able to influence the men around her. And she did this in such a way that she understood the right timing to have the conversation. And then there's also something around her tone of voice. When it comes to seduction, you see, they say normal conversation is like noise, but seduction is like music. What does that then mean? It's like when someone is seducing you, it sounds so sweet, it's beautiful. If you compare noise and music, you could listen to it for years. But noise, after 2 minutes, you want to shut it down. So that is how Cleopatra used her words, her tone of voice, and whatever it was that she was saying, it really cut across and made two of the greatest men fall in love. So I'd love to know who are some of your greatest seductresses, and have you watched the series? Let me know in the comments box what you thought about it and what are some of your biggest ahas. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.